Hi good people, let's discuss this video. People, unless you know your pastor inside out, what they do behind closed doors, don't defend them. Let's not give excuses uh, for why a pastor is engaging in evil stuff.
All right, y'all. So I think a lot of us have heard about the Robert Morris story that has come out just recently, right? I think it's a lot worse than we initially thought it was. And it was already extremely bad when it was first reported. But now I think people are starting to realize how bad it actually was slash is. Now, I believe this was the original source that reported on it. This is from the Wartburg Watch. And it says there's an update. I was 12 years old and I was wearing my pink pajamas when Robert Morris, now of Gateway Church, began to molest me. The alleged abuse lasted for 4.5 years. So she was 12 years old. And at first they kind of came out and I believe they said that he was like grooming her, but they were very, unspecific as to what that meant. And now it comes out that there was actual assault involved and she was only 12 years old and he was in his 20s, early 20s. It also came out that I guess he was a traveling evangelist during this time. He acquired a relationship with the girl's parents and he would stay at their house, when he was traveling and doing youth camps and youth ministry and things like that. And he would sleep in the girl's bedroom. So it was the 12-year-old girl who he assaulted. Her name is Cindy. And then her sister. So they shared a bedroom. But when Robert would come into town, he would sleep in the girl's bedroom and the girls would sleep on the couch or something like that. But one of the nights, ironically, on Christmas night, Robert calls Cindy into the bedroom, her bedroom where he was staying, and begins to touch her and begins to essentially assault her. Now, on the Wartburg Watch, they found a very interesting clip from one of his sermons. This is from 2014. Ironically, it's called Room 12, Rebellious Roots. And he's talking about some of his sexual sin that he dealt with when he was young. And I think it's very interesting. So let's listen to this clip together and then let's continue our conversation.
And could keep us away from Christ and this weak rebellious roots. My rebellion took a form of immorality that I don't like to talk about much. I was very sexually immoral as a teenager. And it started early in my life, and it was very easy for me. Now, I'm going to share something with you that I've really had to struggle with sharing the details, things that I'm going to be sharing with you today. But when I say it was easy for me, I was very immoral, and I was immoral a lot. And I can remember a conversation with my friends, and they said, one of them said, "You're just blessed." That's what they said. Because we would go out and meet girls, and I would end up being immoral just in one night. And so they began actually, it's so horrible to share this because of what the word blessed means to me now. And that I've written a book called The Blessed Life, and it's about giving, not taking. And it's about giving to give, not giving to get. So it's the total opposite of the way I was before I met Christ. Here's what I've realized. I was not blessed, I was cursed. There was a curse on my life where immorality came easy for me. In other words, there was a bent toward that. I'm going to show you that the Lord showed me what the root of that curse was. The reason I'm going to show you is because I think if there's a bent toward your life toward a certain sin, maybe God could show you the root and you could cut the root off and not have that fruit anymore. You understand what I'm saying? I learned to lie and manipulate because I also had rejection. I didn't want to be rejected. So I looked for the girls that would be the most susceptible. And I learned how to spot this in girls. Please hear me. There's a reason I'm sharing this.
So it's very sickening when we listen back to this sermon when he says that he looks for girls who are most susceptible, especially knowing now the fact that he was abusing a 12-year-old.
Hear me. There's a reason I'm sharing this. The very thing, ladies, that the world tells you to give a man before marriage so that you can keep him is the very thing that will cause you to lose him. I looked for girls that did not have a good relationship with their father. I learned to spot that. I looked for girls that were insecure. And I don't know, now I look back on this, I can tell I did it. It wasn't like a plan that I had, but I could spot this. Girls were made to be held by men. And if they are not held, if that need is not met in a healthy way by their father, they will meet it in an unhealthy way.
It leads me to believe that this probably wasn't the first time that he was involved with an underage girl. This was probably one of many times based on what he's saying and admitting in this sermon. This was probably just the first occurrence that we're hearing about. This is just me pondering. This is just me thinking. This is just my personal opinion based on the data that is being presented to us. All right?
But you need to understand that if a man does not respect you, he cannot love you. He cannot love you. As a matter of fact, fulfilled lust turns to hate. And I wish I had time to show you the whole passage. 2 Samuel 13 talks about Amnon and Tamar, and that Amnon really loved her. He loved her, and that Tamar loved him. But Amnon forces her and rapes her. And then I want to just show you one verse. Really, I'd love for you to read the whole chapter later. Verse 15 says, Then Amnon, this is right after it happens, then Amnon hated her exceedingly, so that the hatred with which he hated her was greater than the love with which he had loved her. And Amnon said, Arise and be gone. And she said, No, please don't send me away. And he actually calls a servant and says, Throw this woman out and bolt the door behind her. God meant for us to express love in a healthy way. Because of the lust that was in my life, it has taken years for me to get over the images and the things that I saw that no person should have ever seen. And the appetites that were created in me that God never intended to be created in me. Please understand.
Now, I think he's speaking of predatory behavior, and it wasn't just impulses, as we've learned. He actually acted on those impulses. And that's why I said it's hard for me to believe that that was the only time. Because things like that typically don't just happen one time. Because your appetite for those types of disgusting behaviors only grows. And clearly we see somebody who was actively in ministry, who was also living this lifestyle.
That when God says don't, there's a reason. And I'll just give you one quick so that hopefully you'll understand this. In order to have premarital sex, you have to sneak around to do it. And you have to lie, and you have to be deceptive, and you have to be manipulative. For instance, let me just take a teenage couple. When the teenager's about to go out and the parents say, Where y'all going tonight? They don't say, We're going to have sex. So they have to lie. And then when they come back, where'd you go? What'd you do? They have to lie. So you learn to lie. You learn to be deceptive. And you get this feeling in you of adrenaline rush, because you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. But once you get married, you don't have to sneak around anymore. But you've developed an appetite for sneaking around sex, that sex in marriage can never satisfy that appetite because you don't have to sneak around. And this is why a man will begin to talk to someone at the office and begin to flirt, and he is satisfying, and I'm going to say this in a very strong way, but he's satisfying an appetite that you created in him. And I'm not saying that it's right.
What does that mean?
But I'm trying to get you to understand how important it is not to create an appetite in someone before your marriage. Don't stir up love before it's time, Song of Solomon says. And what will happen is this man will begin to have an affair, and now he's sneaking around. And he'll begin to feel like with her like he felt with you before you got married. And he associates that feeling with love. So he'll begin to think that he loves her and not you. So he divorces you, marries her, and guess what? He doesn't have to sneak around anymore. This is why many men will say, it's just not the same. It's just not the same. And then they will bring things into their sex life that God didn't intend to try to spice it up, quote unquote. And it's not the same because you create an appetite. I'm telling you that my wife and I, we had to deal with things that we should not have had to deal with because of my sin. And I asked the Lord after I got saved, God, what was the root? Why? You know, they said I was blessed. I know I wasn't blessed. I was cursed. Multiple affairs. And I don't understand this, God. And so what was the root? What was the open door in my life? And I want to show you a scripture I showed you a few weeks ago, but it's going to kind of shock you when you see this. Hebrews 12, verses 15 and 16 says, looking carefully lest anyone fall short of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up cause trouble, and by this many become defiled. This word means morally defiled. Many, this is my life. What you're reading this verse is my life. Many became morally defiled. Now watch the very next verse, but it's the same sentence, and I just want to take the first 5 words. Lest there be any fornicator. It goes on, or profane person among you. Okay, lest there be a fornicator. Don't let a root of bitterness spring up, or many will be morally defiled because there will be a fornicator among you. I was the fornicator. And I believe this open door in my life was because there was a root of bitterness in our family. And when I share with you what happened that I've never shared publicly, and I got my mother's permission to share this week.
Girl who he was abusing, Cindy, because remember, like I said, and I believe at this time Robert was married, and that's what it says here. In 1981, Cindy and her family met Robert Morris at a youth revival in Tulsa. He was 21 years old, traveling evangelist, married to Debbie, his current wife. Cindy was 11 years old. Her family was involved in many evangelistic. Her family was involved in the church, essentially. Her dad was a pastor, right? They were active in the church. Morris was invited to do a youth revival in her hometown in Oklahoma. After that, he began to regularly preach at their church on Sundays. He would often stay at her home and sometimes bring his wife, Debbie, and their little boy, Josh. Robert and Debbie quickly became family friends, and Cindy viewed them as safe and friendly. So Cindy is the 11-year-old girl who viewed Robert and and his family, his wife and his son, as safe and friendly. Why would she not? She's 11. She sees this family of Christians come into, their city, preaching to the youth. Why would she have any concerns, right? It says their families would often go on trips with each other. All that changed for Cindy on December 25th, 1982, Christmas night. The Morris family came to visit and spend some time there. Cindy sat in the backseat of the car with Robert. He asked her to visit him in his room that night. She shared a room with her sister. Cindy, an innocent 12-year-old girl, movingly described what she was wearing. She was wearing pink pajamas with the bloomer pants. She wore underwear underneath. She had a snap-up robe on. She thought nothing of visiting a family friend in their bedroom, so she didn't think anything of it. He told her to lie down on her back and touched her stomach. He told her to close her eyes. Then he touched her breasts and felt under her pants. He warned her to never tell anyone about this because it would ruin everything. She returned to her bedroom and didn't tell her sister what happened. Robert Morris repeated this behavior until 1987, March of 1987. This first happened Christmas night 1982. He repeated this behavior until March of 87. This would happen in Texas and Oklahoma, and the family would stay at the Morris home in Texas. Her father donated money to Robert's ministry, not realizing what was happening to his daughter. Could you imagine that? Morris wanted to make out and engage in heavy petting. Heavy petting. So like touching, like aggressively. He reportedly told Debbie that he was counseling Cindy. Cindy wondered if Debbie was in denial about what was happening. Things changed when she turned 16. He would take her out in his car and attempt to have sexual intercourse. Once, he was fixing a vanity in his home and held up a screw and asked Cindy if she wanted to do this. By this time, Morris was a pastor at Shady Grove Church, which would eventually become Gateway Church Grand Prairie campus. The abuse became known to both families. Cindy confided in a close friend, GF, unnamed person who knew both families. Her friend said she needed to tell her parents. Her father was angry and called the head pastor of Shady Grove Church to report Morris. He demanded that Morris get out of ministry, or he would call the sheriff. Morris reportedly stepped down from ministry for 2 years. Cindy received a call from Debbie Morris, who told Cindy that she forgave her. Debbie is a mother. It is inconceivable to me that a mother would blame a 12-year-old child for her husband's abuse. Cindy believes that Robert Morris might have told Debbie it was Cindy's fault. Cindy said things fell apart at this point. Their circle of family friends was no more. 2 years later, Robert returned to Hominy with Debbie, allegedly with James Robinson's blessing. I guess he returns to ministry, allegedly with the father of the girl he was abusing's blessing. The pressure was on, and Robert Morris was aiming for the big time. They told her father that he wanted to get back into ministry. At that point, her father washed his hands of Morris and no longer interacted with him. Cindy sought counseling for the abuse she endured. I believe that Debbie Morris also contributed to her pain by implying Cindy needed to be forgiven by her. It took over a decade of counseling for her to fully comprehend what happened to her during those 4.5 years of abuse. Cindy sought a financial settlement to help reimburse her for her counseling, but she wouldn't sign an NDA. In 2005, she obtained an attorney to file a lawsuit. Robert Morris's attorney responded by implying that they believed it was her fault because she was flirtatious, quote unquote. She asked for $50,000, which was not much in my estimation. They responded that they would give her $25,000 if she signed an NDA. She refused. So she can now tell her side of the story. Update from June 14th, 2024. Cindy found relevant information in Robert Morris's book, From Dream to Destiny, which was written in 2011. He says he stepped down from the ministry when he was 25 due to issues of pride. It says immediately after connecting with Cindy, I received a call from a young woman, 30s, who told me that the men in the group would often sit next to her, stroking her hair and commenting about her looks. She spoke to the leaders, but they didn't respond meaningfully, and the uncomfortable behavior continued. She then reported it in a note to the pastoral staff at the church. They did not respond, so she left the church. I wonder if the church does not take complaints like this seriously due to their experiences. So my question is, at this point in time, he was already in ministry, right? He was already in ministry. He's abusing a 12-year-old while he's married under the same roof that his wife is in, that his son is in. He's abusing a 12-year-old under the same roof that her parents are in. Her father also in ministry, and he's abusing a 12-year-old under the same roof. Why did he go back to ministry at all after that? Who permitted him to go back into ministry at all after that situation? This is somebody who was actively in ministry, was actively growing ministry, specifically youth ministry, and was abusing a pastor's 12-year-old daughter under his roof, under the very roof that he opened up the door for his wife and son to sleep during the time that they would travel to preach the gospel. And he's abusing his 12-year-old daughter.
Christians, we know that the devil is serious about spreading his ideology. Let's spread the word by our actions. Christians should also be serious about being the light of the world. I hope you watched the video from beginning to the end. Remember to subscribe, like the video, share. Thank you.